So how do we graph systems? The first thing we do is we graph both lines. This is the big thing, right? A system is two equations. Sometimes it's 3 equations and not for 2, but for this year it's just 2 equations. So you're going to graph both lines, and then you plot. The solution is going to be a point where they intersect. Okay, so intersect means where they meet. Like right here would be the solution of these 2 lines. Okay, so now let's talk about graphing lines. Just a couple quick reminders. Hopefully you don't need this, but if you do, it's fine. Here it is. Remember, the number over here is always the y-intercept. Okay, this is the y-intercept. So when I go to graph a line, I start here. This is going to be your starting point, even though it's the second number. And you're going to start the graph here on the y-axis, because this is where your line is going to hit the y-axis. Remember, that's the up and down axis. Okay, so whatever number you see here, you're going to take a look at the y-axis, you're going to find that number, and you're going to graph your point right there, your first point right there. Now, just remember, sometimes there's nothing here, and that means it's 0. That means the b is 0, because that means it's something times x plus 0, and we just don't write plus 0 because it doesn't do anything. Okay, and then the other number that you're going to see is this number right here, and that is your slope. Okay, and if you remember, the slope is rise over run. It's a fraction. It's rise over run. Now, something you have to remember is that we need slope to be a fraction. We need it to be rise over run. So if it's a whole number, what do? We just take that number and we put it over 1. Okay, so if it's -2, it's -2 over 1. If it's 5, it's 5 over 1. Okay, and then the other thing to remember is that if there is nothing here, right? If there's nothing here, if there's just an x and nothing being multiplied by it, that's a 1, because that's a 1x, right? So that would mean that the slope is 1, and in fact that would become 1 over 1. Okay, so let's just look at a couple quick examples of equations and what would be their slope and their y-intercept. Right, so an equation like this, okay, my y-intercept, I would start my graph at a y-intercept of 5, right? And then my slope is -2. Now it's a whole number, so I would make it -2 over 1. So I would start at 5, I would go down 2 over 1. And I would sketch my line. Okay, what about y equals -2/3 x minus 7? Well, here I would start at my y-intercept of -7, right? It'd be here. And now here, notice that it's a fraction and it's negative. So what I would do is I would just tack that negative to the top of the fraction. I would go down 2, right 3. And my line looks something like this. Okay, and I'm just going through a couple examples because sometimes you get caught in a situation where you're like, oh wait, but what about this? Okay, so here my b is 4, my starting point is 4, right? I would start my graph right here at 4. And my slope here is 1, right? There's nothing there, so it's 1, which makes it 1 over 1. So I'd go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, right? And my line would look something like this. Let's just do one more example. How about this one? Here, what's my b? Well, there's nothing there. It's just, right? There's nothing there. So that would be b equals 0. And m is -3 over 1. So what does it look like for b to be 0? You would start right here at the origin, and then this would be -3, right? Down 3 over 1. Okay, so let's just quickly do question number 6. And once you kind of have this, then it's super fast. Okay, so here are our 2 equations in question number 6. And we're just going to sketch a quick graph right here. Okay, so here my b is 0. There is no b, right? And then my m is 3 over 1. So on a graph, that's going to look like this. I'm going to go up 3 over 1, right? And my line will look, something like this. Okay, now this one, my b is -7, and my slope is -1 over 2. So my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? It'd be something like this. And then it'll go down 1, right 2. So down 1, right 2, will look something like this. So your graph will look something like this. And where should these points meet? I will tell you when you graph it on a nice clean graph, they should meet at -2, -6.